Learning Perek Vav Halacha Beis, Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. Bolo Matzah Yotze, Bolo Mora Lo Yotze. If you swallowed matzah, he's yotze, and if you swallowed mora, he's not yotze. We'll go down to the Peirush, meaning if he swallowed it without chewing it, he's yotze. But if he swallowed mora, he's not yotze. The difference between matzah and mora is, because Achilles mora, we'll learn in Perek Ches, that it's not mitzvah not Torah by itself, only mitzvah as we learned earlier, but the Achilles matzah doesn't have to do with Korban Pesach. Elo, it's a mitzvah b'nei atzmo that's noig every place, because Achilles mora is not a mitzvah by itself. It's a part of eating the Achilles Bostoner Pesach. Only Rabbanan you have to eat mora today, Leil Pesach. Even when you don't have a Korban Pesach. And since the Rambam wants to explain this difference, so he tells you the difference between them, as in the Gemara. Therefore, you're not yotze because by mora they enacted it, so you should have the bitterness in your mouth. Now, bolo matzah mora ke'echod. If he swallowed matzah and mora together, yidei matzah yotze, yidei mora lo yotze. Shea mora kitzvelo lo matzah. The mora is incidental to the matzah. Korchan b'siv. If he put both the matzah and the mora inside a sieve, is a piece of the date tree, is a frond of the date. Anything that covers it completely, a bolon. So his throat and his mouth never touched the matzah, never touched the mora. It wasn't yotze matzah. The Magen Mishnah cites psochim. Rava says, "Bolo matzah yotze, bolo mora yotze." If he swallowed matzah and mora together, he's yotze matzah, but mini mora wasn't yotze. If he swallowed them with something separating between them and his mouth, matzah, you're not yotze either. And the Magen Mishnah explains, if you swallowed mora, you're not yotze, because you have to have the taste of mora in your mouth. That the eating reminds one of a yemoru es chayeyim. Like we say in Haggadah of Pesach, mora zeh shono echlim, and that's exactly what we say. There's three things that you have to say on Leil Pesach. Pesach, Rambam says, Kol shelo yoma posach matzah mora lo yotzo. And when you say mora, you say Pesach zu shono echlim, and it gives us a reason. Mora zu shono echlim, al shum mora. Why? Because the Mitzrayim made our lives bitter. Our fathers, forebearers' lives bitter in Mitzrayim. It says, "Vayemor is chayim." Therefore, somebody who swallows mora, he doesn't feel the taste, he's not yotze. But when he's b'lei matzah, since it reaches his mouth, it's considered like eating, and he's yotze yidei chavosai. When he's b'lei matzah together with the mora, Rambam says, yidei matzah yotze. Why? Even though the mora separates between the matzah and his mouth, it's not considered a hefsek, because the mora is incidental to the matzah. But when you have something else, a third item, like a palm frond, separating it from the mouth, you're not yotze even matzah. And it would seem to be that's the case for Rashi as well, the Magen Mishnah says. Now the text of the Halacha Mishnah in the Rambam was, if you swallow matzah, you're yotze, bolo mora, you're also yotze. But if you swallow matzah and mora, matzah, you're yotze, mora, you're not yotze. And this text is mentioned in the Rambam, and the Halacha Mishnah explains it, why you yotze when you swallow mora, because there's a taste of mora. You still get that taste, you get a slight taste. But if you take matzah and mora together, since the mora, you're not yotze the mora, and according to the Rambam, because the mora, Rambam gives a reasoning for it, because the mora is incidental to the matzah. According to this text, the Rambam's text, if you swallow mora, you're not yotze, we understand why, if you have matzah and mora together, you're not yotze yidei mora, because even if you swallow mora alone, you're not yotze. The Rambam comes to tell us that mora is extraneous to the matzah, to emphasize why matzah you are yotze. You don't say that the Morah separates between the matzah to his mouth. But according to the text of the Halacha Mishnah, that if you swallowed Morah by itself, you yoytze. Rambam explains that Morah is like tefillah, is secondary to matzah, to explain why when he takes the matzah and Morah together, you're not yoytze Morah. Rabbeinu Manoach brings the gears of the Halacha Mishnah, and he explains that Yidei Matzah Yoytze, even though you don't taste the taste of matzah without chewing it, since if you want to, you could have tasted it, therefore is Yoytze. And he adds that that's only b'diavad, after the fact. But to begin with, a person has to chew and feel the taste of matzah. That's why we don't eat matzah Erev Pesach at all. It continues. There are those who say that if you swallow Morah, you yoytze, because it's impossible that you won't taste some of the Morah. Or it could be, if he wants to taste, he can taste it. Therefore, he's yoytze. However, there are those who write lo yotze, because you need to taste it. That's why the Chacham instituted Morah in our times, not when there's a Korban Pesach. Torah said you should eat something bitter. The mouth of a person will eat bitter in the commemoration of Vayemoros Chayim. And that's what the text of the Rabbeinik Hananel is. And it brings further raya that the reason of Morah, you need to have the taste. And since he didn't chew it and he ate matzah with it, there's no time. Now, therefore, you're not yoytze Yidei Morah. Since when he's eating the matzah and the Morah together, the matzah is the main item. Therefore, you don't feel the taste of the Morah. The Raven disagrees. Zeh shikush. It's a mistake. That's not shein zu zeh tam l'Morah. This is not the reason of Morah. Because you can't taste Morah unless you chew it. The Magen Mishnah explains what's the intent of the Bible. That he understood that the Rambam gives a reason why Yidei Morah lo yotze, because the Morah is like tefillah l'matzah. And on this he's masik. He disagrees that it's a mistake. That's not the reason. You're not yoytze Morah because you didn't taste the time of Morah when you didn't chew it. So the Magen Mishnah says that what the intent of the Rambam wasn't to give us why by Morah you're not yoytze, but he's giving a reason why you are yoytze matzah when you eat it together with the Morah, because the Morah is incidental to the matzah. And the Halacha Mishnah says, according to the Raven, the nusach in the Gemara was Bola Morah lo yotze, and therefore he disagreed with the Rambam. You don't taste the Morah because what the reasoning of the Rambam like the Magen Mishnah. And therefore the Magen Mishnah explains that if you put it inside a palm item, like a frond, and you swallowed it, your matzah is also not yoytze, because the frond is considered a separation, and you wouldn't fulfill your obligation for matzah. So the Halacha Mishnah asks the question: what's the difference what's the differentiation between having matzah kept from being tasted because of the frond or because of Morah? If the frond is considered a separation, why shouldn't the Morah be considered a separation? And if we'll say, when he said that he's not yoytze, the chayiv is a Morah when the frond is when the entire kezayis was covered with a sieve, so that nothing touched his mouth, and therefore this is separation. But by Morah, he's talking where he did not conceal, but rather he swallowed both of them together. The Rambam should have made a differentiation by Morah itself, that if he covered the entire Morah, then if he covered the matzah totally, where there's no matzah, you would not be yoytze. The Halacha Mishnah answers that even if he surrounded the matzah with Morah, he's still yoytze, since that he did the mitzvah, which is an obligation that he swallow matzah, even though he wasn't yoytze Morah. However, when he covers it with something which has nothing to do with the mitzvah of matzah or mora, therefore it would be a hefsek, and you're not yoytze even mitzvah matzah. The Amagi in the Mishnah Melech has a question. What's the thing if he mixed a dover issa with a sieve and he ate it? Is he like since he ate the dover issa, or maybe since he put it into a sieve, then there's no issa achila to get malchus on it? And he cites the Mishnah Melech in Machon Nesher that brings from Hilchos Chametz that a person, we know that if a person eats a gazayas from Bostoner Rebbe, if it goes to he becomes tomei. That's the din in Torah, and his begotten become tomei. And if he puts the nevelos oivtor in chazeres and something like it, and he swallowed it, even though it didn't touch his throat, he's tomei. But however, if he did it in a sieve and he swallowed it, he's Torah. So the Magi asks the question, what's the difference between achila b'tumah? And since if he ate it, he's like it, or maybe because when he tied it, he put it into a sieve, he wouldn't get malchus, just like he wouldn't become tomei. He's Torah. He didn't touch his throat. So the Rabbi Kiva Eiger answers that according to the explanation of the Kesef Mishnah, that shemin v'mino ein achoitze, meaning that the same type does not separate. Therefore, chazeres, which is a lettuce that you surrounded around meat, of an nevelos oivtor, of a dead bird that's tahor, does not separate between his throat to the tumah, because chazeres and the ov are both food, and food items do not separate as far as tumah goes. But sieve, that's not minoi, which is not an item of food, separates by tumah. And with this, we can answer the question of the Halacha Mishnah, because only when he surrounds the matzah with his sieve, not yotzirei matzah, because it's not food. But if you would surround it with other foods, the din would be that min v'minoi doesn't separate because it's a food item, and the matzah you would be yotzirei achilus matzah. Sure enough, the halacha l'maisa is that if you swallow matzah, you're yotzir. If you swallow mora, you're not yotzir, because you need to taste the time of mora. It's specifically stated by the Mechaber. But the Mishnah Berurah says if you swallow matzah, yotzeh only that's after the fact, because it's called eating, even though you didn't chew it and you didn't feel the taste of matzah. But to begin with, certainly you have to chew it until you feel the taste in your mouth. And when you swallow mora, you're not yotzeh. Mishnah Berurah says because you have to feel it, the mirrors in the bitterness in your mouth, in commemoration of a yemora was chayim. Go to the next. The Mechaber continues. Even if you swallow matzah and mora together, you yotzeh matzah. Yidei mora lo yotzeh. He adds that we don't say that the mora is mevatel the matzah, because nullification is only shayach. It's only possible if you chew it together and they get mixed together. Here, since they didn't chew each one together, therefore, when you swallow them, so you yotzeh the matzah, more or not, because you have to explain again, because it's secondary to the matzah. The Mechaber continues. If he mixed them in a sieve, he covered them with a frond, we'll call it, a boloi, and he swallowed it. You're not yotzeh matzah, because this is not called eating. The Mishnah Berurah cites the name of the Pri Chodesh. If he covered the matzah with something that is edible, not only mora, and he swallowed it, you yotzeh, even though there's something separating it, because they're both considered food items. And even if he did the matzah totally with mora or some other lettuce, let us say, not romaine lettuce, lettuce or cabbage, yotzeh, Because min b'minoi, here the word min b'minoi doesn't mean that it's the same type. It means that it's a food item. Eino choitz, it's regarding the din of matzah, it's called that he ate.